In the world of Fallout, America didn't just fall, it crumbled from the inside out. Greed, war, corruption, and corporate control slowly poisoned everything until there was nothing left but propaganda, power armor, and the glow of mushroom clouds. This is the full story of how the United States went from global superpower to radioactive wasteland, how it lost its soul long before it lost the war. But this wasn't an overnight collapse, it was a slow-motion disaster decades in the making, a chain of choices driven by fear, selfishness, and the blind obsession with dominance. As the rest of the world spiraled into chaos, America doubled down on nationalism, on militarization, and on hollow promises of a brighter future fueled by nuclear power. Behind the smiling faces and upbeat jingles was a nation on the edge, quietly unraveling. This is how it all came apart, how the so-called land of the free became a broken husk scorched by atomic fire. This is how America truly fell in Fallout. Their fire was pained by the relentless resource wars of the 21st century. As the world's natural resources dwindled and access to fossil fuels like oil became a life-or-death struggle, global stability crumbled. Nations that once cooperated now viewed each other as threats. International alliances fractured, global collapsed, energy independence became the new arms race, and at the center of it all was the United States, clinging desperately to its status as the world's superpower. The annexation of Canada was a turning point. This was when America decided to invade Canada, justified publicly as a protective measure to secure energy supplies and oil to ensure North American stability. It was really a raw display of military might. Canadian citizens were subjected to harsh martial law, protests were silenced, resources were extracted and funneled towards America. The moment that America stopped pretending to be a defender of freedom and started acting like an empire. Simultaneously, the invasion of Mexico, supposedly to deal with domestic unrest and rebellion, mirrored a dark colonial history. The US military's presence was seen as oppressive, and the campaign drained resources, anti-American sentiment across Latin America. The crown jewel of imperial ambitions was Alaska. It was rich in oil and strategically vital. The Chinese, desperate for energy, invaded Alaska, igniting a brutal war of attrition. America responded by militarizing at an unprecedented scale. Power armor was deployed en masse, and robotic drones were used for reconnaissance and executions. Cybernetic enhancements became common among elite soldiers, and civilians were fed patriotic propaganda and nuclear optimism. But behind the curtain, the nation was running on fumes. Infrastructure crumbled, civil unrest fostered, and martial law became normalized. Democracy was quietly dismantled in favor of wartime authoritarianism. And in the chaos, megacorporations like vault-tec, Robco, and Poseidon Energy seized unprecedented control. Government contracts became blank checks and logged megacorporations. The seeds of destruction weren't just planted, they were fertilized with fear, greed, and the dream of endless profit. Then, on the morning of October 23, 2077, the unthinkable happened. In just under 2 hours, the whole world as we knew it ceased to exist. Cities were turned into craters, skies were blackened, oceans boiled, and all of humanity's progress, its science, art, dreams, and ambitions was obliterated in a matter of minutes. Brewing for decades, but the final moments were sudden and chaotic. Tensions between the United States and China had reached their breaking point. Propaganda painted each nation as monsters, diplomacy had failed, and nuclear arsenals had become the only currency of power left. And whether the first strike came from China or the USA, we do not know, because it didn't matter. What followed was total annihilation. America's major cities, Washington DC, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, were hit within seconds. The East Coast was blanketed in radiation. Strategic military targets flagged. Fallout rained down like judgment. Those lucky enough to make it to vaults slammed their doors shut as the world burned outside. Those who didn't die in agony were incinerated, irradiated, or slowly consumed by the poisoned earth. The nukes didn't just destroy buildings, they destroyed reality. The biosphere collapsed completely overnight. Millions of people who initially survived the blast died within days or weeks from exposure, radiation, and societal breakdown. But perhaps the most haunting thing is that no side won. There were no victors, no triumphs, no treaties, just silence. As they say, war never changes. The Great War wasn't a war in the traditional sense. It was mass extinction triggered by human arrogance. It was the end of the world, not with warning sirens or presidential speeches, but with blind panic and irreversible loss. The ultimate irony, though, was that the very technologies and powers that were meant to preserve civilization were the ones that finally erased it. In the years leading to the Great War, vault-tec emerged as a national savior. At least, that's how it was sold to the public. Marketed as the United States' answer to nuclear disaster, Project Safe House was hailed as a revolutionary achievement in civil defense. 122 vaults were constructed across the nation, each a marvel of engineering and promise. They were sold as havens of hope, places where families could survive nuclear fallout and rebuild society afterward. But this entire narrative was a lie. Behind the patriotic commercials and the smiling mascots, vault-tec had no intention of saving the American people. The company was a front for large-scale unethical experimentation by the government and fueled by the enclave's ideology of genetic and social engineering. Only a handful of vaults were designed for genuine survival. The rest were lab rats. Grim playgrounds where human suffering was the control variable. Some vaults tested psychological endurance. Vault 11 forced residents to sacrifice one person each year to keep a mysterious machine from punishing everyone. Test of obedience, morality, think. Vault 106 was pumped full of hallucinogens, turning its inhabitants into violent high maniacs. Vault 34 was overstocked with weapons but understocked with security. The result was chaos. Vault 92 housed musicians subjected to subliminal combat training, turning art into weaponry. Other experiments were even more disturbing. Vault 87 used the forced evolutionary virus to create super mutants, exposing subjects to radiation and biotoxins until they mutated beyond recognition. Vault 75 adopted children and subjected them to genetic experiments under the guise of education and training. Vault 9 and 68 manipulated gender ratios to observe reproductive behaviors and social collapse. Vault-tec's goal wasn't survival, it was transformation, and it wasn't alone. Robco installed hidden surveillance systems to track behavior, Big MT developed devices that altered memory, personality, and perception, and Poseidon Energies used vaults to test unstable power grids and fusion models. It was capitalism pushed to its final apocalyptic form, where the consumer was the product. These corporations sealed their test subjects away and walked into bunkers with data tablets in hand. In a world where government had collapsed into corporate boards, vault-tec's actions weren't seen as criminal, they were profitable. Humanity's final moments became nothing but spreadsheets, and sadly the experiments didn't stop with the bombs, they just went underground instead. From the ashes of this nuclear inferno, a new world began to emerge. Survivors, hardened by loss and radiation, formed desperate groups and societies, each with their own vision for the future of the wasteland. In the West, the new California Republic, drawing inspiration from the old world, sought to rebuild democracy and order. To the east, Caesar's legion carved out a brutal empire based on conquest and slavery. The enigmatic Brotherhood of Steel, obsessed with preventing pre-war, emerged as a pattern clashing with others for control of valuable relics. And lurking in the shadows was the Enclave, claiming to be the direct descendants of the pre-war United States government, plotted their return to power, wielding advanced technology and a chilling sense of entitlement. The wasteland became a forge, burning away weakness and reshaping humanity. Some tried to rebuild, others chose domination, and most just tried to survive. The new California Republic, born from the remnants of Vault 15 and the Shady Sand settlement, represent the closest thing to the old world's ideals. Founded by Aradesh and later led by the legendary President Tandy, The NCR expanded rapidly, absorbing towns under its banner through diplomacy and, when necessary, a slight use of force. Their flag bears the image of a two-headed bear, a mutated version of the old California Republic symbol, and a perfect metaphor for the NCR itself, torn between idealism and ruthless pragmatism. They rebuilt infrastructure, opened schools, and tried to restore law. But with expansion came bloated bureaucracy, greed, and exploitation. Not everyone joined the NCR willingly. Some were conquered. Others starved as resources were funneled towards wealthier core states. In their prime, 1,000 people under them, and their war with Caesar's legion revealed deep cracks in their armor. Even as they held on, it was clear that the Republic was beginning to look more and more like the empire it had once resisted becoming. In the scorched deserts of the Mojave and beyond, Caesar's legion enforces its vision of order through sheer brutality. Modeled after the Roman Empire, the legion is a slave-driven, hyper-militarized society that crushes dissent with absolute ruthlessness. Caesar, formerly Edward Sallow, didn't just study history, he weaponized it. He united. Disobedience was punished with crucifixion, and loyalty was rewarded with survival. To the legion, the chaos of the old world was proof that democracy had failed them. Only absolute control enforced by military dominance and cultural erasure could prevent future collapse. But beneath the order lay rot. Suppressed knowledge, suppressed technology, and suppressed humanity. What Caesar built wasn't a nation, it was a machine, and machines break over time. The Brotherhood of Steel began as US Army soldiers who, after learning of the government's unethical experiments, deserted and formed their own order, dedicated to hoarding and controlling pre-war technology. They see themselves as the last guardians against humanity's self-destruction. But the Brotherhood's obsession with control made them enemies of nearly everybody. They saw technology as sacred and humanity as unworthy. While they patrolled in power armor and hunted down anyone with energy weapons, the people starved. Different chapters took different approaches. The East Coast Brotherhood, under Elder Leons, tried to become protectors. Under Maxim, they turned back towards authoritarianism. Meanwhile, out west, the Brotherhood was dying, beaten black by the NCR, hiding in bunkers, and refusing to change. In the end, their greatest foe was their fear of progress, of people, and of sharing power. The Enclave is the darkest remnant of the old world, a secretive cabal of pre-war politicians, military leaders, and scientists who fled to offshore oil rigs and bunkers before the bombs fell, believing themselves as the pure descendants of America, as they sought to exterminate all mutated life, including most wastelanders, to reclaim the continent. Their ideology was rooted in eugenics, nationalism, and technological superiority. They didn't want to rebuild America, they wanted to resurrect its ugliest parts. The experiments with the forced evolutionary virus, which is a virus that turned people into super mutants, and their betrayal of any attempt at unity, they were the worst of the old world distilled into human form. Though destroyed multiple times, first by the Chosen One and then by the Lone Wanderer, Enclave remnants still survive, and as long as they do, the threat of a return to tyranny lingers. Fallout may be fiction, but its fall is disturbingly familiar. Rising tensions over national resources, growing corporate power, and governments more interested in military might than human welfare are not just plot points, they're headlines today. The idea of companies like vault-tec experimenting on the public sounds far-fetched until you remember unethical testing in the real world, and the constant theme of safety being sold to the people by the very forces that destroy them. That's not just dystopia, it's deja vu. I'm looking at you, Mr. Orange. Think of the Manhattan Project, a real-world example of scientific innovation used to unleash horror, the atomic bomb. Think of corporations lobbying for oil wars or pharmaceutical companies suppressing data for profit. The collapse of Fallout America isn't just about nukes. It's about the systematic failure. It's about leaders who stop listening, about citizens trained to ignore red flags, about systems built to enrich a field while burning everybody else down. And even in the face of disaster, Fallout shows that humanity finds ways to survive, sometimes through rebuilding, through oppression, but always through a change. Hence, Fallout isn't just a warning, it's a mirror, one we should all be paying more attention to. The fall of America and Fallout is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition, resource scarcity, and the ever-present threat of nuclear annihilation. It's a world where the optimistic dreams of the atomic age were tragically twisted into a nightmare, and where the remnants of the old world struggle to forge a new future amidst the ruins. The story of the Great War and the enduring, often sinister legacy of vault-tec continues to shape the wasteland. Conflicts that ended the world as it once was. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of next month, so it would really help me out. And shout out to Not Freaking Nick for the video idea. He made a similar video but talking about cyberpunk instead, and that's where I got my inspiration from. I should check his channel out. It's pretty cool. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Subscribe, please. You know what? Fucking do it. I'm forcing you, bitch.